Imagine spending your entire life just grinding.
Oh, the classic hustle.
Right, the endless hustle. You build an online business entirely from scratch. You achieve that ultimate digital nomad dream. And by the time you're 25 years old, you've lived in 8 different countries.
Living out of a suitcase, total freedom.
Exactly. You have achieved total, undeniable financial freedom. But then you wake up in the middle of the night in this freezing, snowy apartment in Prague, realizing that you are just entirely, devastatingly unhappy.
It is honestly the ultimate paradox. I mean, we're taught that money acts as this protective shield against misery.
Yeah.
But when you completely bypass your own internal compass just to acquire that money, the shield basically becomes a cage.
That is such a good way to put it. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is, frankly, a complete teardown and reconstruction of your relationship with money and success.
And we really mean a complete reconstruction.
We do. We are looking at a really fascinating stack of sources to guide this for you today. Our main anchor is Eric John Campbell's book. It's called Your Unique Path to Wealth. Create a life you love overflowing with abundance, joy, and purpose.
Such a great title.
It really is. And we're also bringing in his Insight Timer audio course, a very revealing YouTube interview he did recently. And we're mixing in some viral social media discussions we found on Lemon8 about the actual tangible meaning of wealth.
And this conversation just couldn't be more timely. Culturally, I think we are right in the middle of this massive reevaluation of work and values.
Oh, 100%.
That traditional blueprint like work yourself to the bone, hoard all your resources, and just delay your happiness until retirement. It's fracturing. I mean, people are seeing right through it.
They really are, but the alternative isn't always super clear, right? Which is why redefining wealth on a very personal level is the only way to avoid the exact trap you just described, getting the capital but losing your soul along the way.
Exactly. And that brings us right back to that freezing apartment in Prague.
Yes, the Prague Awakening. Because before we decode Campbell's actual financial philosophy, you really need to understand the catalyst that birthed the whole thing.
It wasn't just a casual career change.
No, not at all. He didn't just decide to pivot over a cup of coffee. He was alone, dead of winter, having achieved everything he supposedly wanted, when he experienced this sudden, really intense spiritual awakening.
And the way he describes it in that YouTube interview, it's incredibly visceral.
Yeah, it is.
He says he felt this strange, undeniable presence in his body. And it was jarring enough that his instinct wasn't to just, go back to sleep.
Right. He opens his laptop instead.
Exactly. He opens his laptop in the dark.
And he sits there in the glow of the screen and just starts engaging in automatic writing. His hands are moving, and this one specific phrase keeps channeling through him over and over on the page.
Wake up, it's all energy.
Wake up, it's all energy. And because of that single midnight epiphany, he effectively walks away from his entire traditional business path.
Just drops it.
Just drops it. He dives into clairvoyant training, breath work, crystal reiki. I mean, a complete 180-degree turn.
Which, perfectly illustrates the core premise of the first 2 chapters of his book.
Yeah.
Chapter 1 is all about radically redefining wealth. So moving away from just a monetary figure and expanding it to include freedom, purpose, and joy.
Right.
But chapter 2 is where the actual heavy lifting happens. It's about breaking limiting beliefs. Because Campbell had to shatter this deeply ingrained idea that his grueling hustle was the only valid metric of success.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit, because I do want to push back just a little here.
Sure, go for it.
It feels like trying to sail a boat by standing on the deck and blowing into the sails yourself.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right, until you're blue in the face and totally exhausted, and then suddenly at 2 a.m. in Prague, someone taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, you can just angle the canvas to catch the wind, right?
Yeah, just let the wind do the work.
Exactly. It's a great realization. But is it really that simple? Can you just drop a lifelong pursuit of traditional success just because of a sudden realization about energy?
Well, the realization seems sudden, but the mechanism behind it has been building for years. When he channeled "it's all energy," he was finally vocalizing the internal friction he'd been ignoring for so long.
That makes sense.
Hustle culture really demands that we force our will onto the physical world. But if the material world is basically just a mirror of your internal state, which is the whole foundation of energetic alignment, then forcing the external without fixing the internal is just completely futile.
It's like painting over a moldy wall.
Exactly. He realized he was exhausted because his internal frequency was operating on scarcity and fear, even though his bank account was completely full. You literally cannot outwork a misaligned frequency.
Which really opens the door to the most striking concept from his Insight Timer course. Because if everything is energy and we need to stop blowing on the sails and start catching the wind, how does that actually practically alter the number in our bank accounts?
That's the million-dollar question.
Literally. And here's where it gets so interesting. Campbell argues that the energy of money vibrates at the exact same frequency as self-love.
And that right there, equating currency with self-acceptance, that is a massive disruption of our normal financial psychology.
Huge.
Because we typically associate money with survival, or competition, or power. To shift that to self-love completely rewires how you approach earning.
And he illustrates this using what I'm just going to call the cat analogy.
It was my favorite part.
It's so good. So imagine money as a cat in the room with you. If you desperately need that cat to like you and you start chasing it around the living room.
Diving behind the sofa to grab it.
Right, diving behind the couch. The cat obviously senses your frantic, needy energy. So what does it do? It panics and runs away. But if you just stop, you sit in a comfortable chair, you open a good book, you pour a cup of tea, and you just focus entirely on enjoying your own presence.
Eventually that cat just wanders right over.
Purrs and jumps right into your lap.
Because the cat senses safety.
When
When you are grounded and content in your own energy, you become an inviting environment.
It is a beautiful image. But here is the glaring issue for anyone listening who has real-world responsibilities.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's say I love myself. I am sitting in my armchair drinking my tea, totally vibrating at the frequency of self-love.
Loving your best life.
Right. But meanwhile, my landlord only accepts a bank transfer, and my electric bill is 2 weeks past due.
The real world comes knocking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How does Campbell bridge that gap between, like, ethereal vibes and physical cash? Because adopting cat energy sounds like a really fast track to eviction if you just become totally passive.
Right. And that is exactly where people misunderstand and abandon this whole philosophy. Because they confuse energetic alignment with physical inaction. Campbell is not telling you to ignore the electric bill or quit your job. He's asking you to deeply examine your nervous system while you are paying the bill and while you are working.
So it's about the state you're in while doing the thing.
Exactly. And this is where he introduces this psychological concept called the divine wound.
The divine wound. Let's really dig into that.
So the divine wound is basically the unhealed, hidden part of your psyche that falsely believes money is a savior.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that persistent whisper telling you, hey, once you hit this specific net worth, you'll finally be worthy of love, you'll finally be safe, and you can finally relax.
Which is something I think almost everyone listening can probably relate to on some level.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But here's the catch. When you operate from this wound, your desire for money is fueled entirely by desperation. You are effectively broadcasting a continuous signal to the universe that says, I am currently unsafe. I am currently lacking.
And if money is energy and it responds like the cat, that desperate broadcast is just completely repellent.
Precisely. It is the exact opposite of a magnet. If you genuinely believe you cannot enjoy your life until the money arrives, you are strangling the flow of abundance.
So self-love is actually the practical antidote to the divine wound.
Yes. When you practice radical self-love, you accept your worthiness today, right now, regardless of your bank balance. And the mechanism here is psychological just as much as it is spiritual.
How so?
Well, when you remove the desperation, your cortisol levels actually drop. You stop making frantic, short-sighted financial decisions.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. You can spot opportunities you would have totally missed when you were panicked. You negotiate from a place of power instead of begging. So you aren't sitting passively. You're engaging with the economy from a state of calm, unshakable worth.
So by treating yourself with respect and dropping the panic, the cat, meaning the resources, the clients, the opportunities, feels safe enough to approach you. You are still acting, but the engine driving the action has changed from fear to peace.
Exactly. Which perfectly segues into chapters 3 and 4 of his book, which focus on discovering your purpose and designing your ideal life.
Because once you stop grinding out of fear, you're left with this somewhat terrifying blank slate.
Yeah, you have to actually figure out what your actions should be directed toward.
And the sources are very clear about how to navigate that. We have to learn to distinguish between what the ego demands and what the heart desires.
Huge distinction.
Because ego desires are fundamentally rooted in fear and comparison. The ego says, I need to start a tech company so my family thinks I'm successful, or I need a luxury car so my neighbors know I made it.
Ego desires are heavy. They feel like obligations, and they're always tethered to how other people perceive you.
Yes, but heart desires feel entirely different. They feel peaceful, they don't feel frantic, they feel inevitable.
Yes.
And to help pinpoint those heart desires, Campbell asks this phenomenal question in his YouTube interview. He says, "What would you do if you had unlimited money?"
I love the anecdote he shares for this.
Oh, the hairdresser. Yes, share that.
So he talks about a hairdresser who was asked, if you won a $50 million lottery tomorrow, what would you do? And without missing a single beat, she said, I would still do hair.
That is just incredible.
It is the ultimate indicator of a heart-aligned path. She located the activity that lights up her soul, completely independent of the financial reward. The action itself is the currency she values most.
I hear that and I think, wow, good for her. But realistically, most people hear advice like follow your heart's desire, and they feel an immediate crushing pressure.
Totally. It creates this toxic all-or-nothing mentality.
Right. It makes people feel like they are failing at spiritual wealth unless they march into their boss's office tomorrow, quit their corporate 9 to 5, and become a full-time watercolor painter.
And that pressure is just the ego sneaking back in through the side door, trying to paralyze you with fear all over again. But Campbell dismantles this myth entirely in Chapter 5 of his book, where he talks about building the right mindset through small, consistent habits. You absolutely do not need to blow up your life or have a massive safety net to start aligning with your heart.
So what does the actual practical first step look like for someone?
It looks like 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Campbell suggests finding the thing that lights up your soul and doing it for just 10 minutes a day. That's it.
Honestly, 10 minutes feels almost too small to make a difference. How does playing a guitar or painting for 10 minutes completely rewire your financial reality?
Well, it's about breaking energetic stagnation. Think about the physiological mechanism here. If you spend 8 hours a day at a job you absolutely despise, your nervous system is probably hovering in a low-level freeze state.
Just totally surviving.
Right. You're surviving. Your creativity is shut down, your worldview narrows, and you literally lack the biological energy to even envision a better life.
Wow, yeah.
But when you carve out just 10 minutes to do something purely for joy, with zero expectation of monetizing it, you reignite that internal spark. You signal to your brain that pleasure and creativity are safe.
It shifts your vibration out of survival mode.
Exactly. And once that vibration shifts, momentum builds. You start noticing synchronicities. Fresh energy brings new ideas, and suddenly paths feel possible that were completely invisible when you were bogged down in lethargy.
Which ties into Chapters 6 and 7, right?
Yeah.
Creating multiple income streams and smart money management.
Yes, and this is where Campbell introduces this fascinating reframing of money. He stops calling it a goal and starts calling it fuel.
Fuel.
Yeah, its only real purpose is to be a substance that makes your inner child feel safe enough to play, experiment, and create in the physical world.
Fuel for the inner child to play. That is profoundly liberating. But this actually brings us to a major tension point in our research.
Oh, the grounding issue.
Right. We have spent a lot of time discussing these beautiful, ethereal concepts, intuition, heart space, cosmic energy, inner child play, but we still live on Earth.
We certainly do.
We have physical bodies, we sit in physical traffic, we buy physical groceries. How do we take these massive cosmic ideas and actually anchor them to reality?
Grounding. Grounding is the absolute linchpin of Campbell's entire philosophy. In fact, if you skip this part, the rest of the energetic work is practically useless.
He actually points out a pretty glaring contradiction in the spiritual community, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, he notes that highly spiritual people often struggle immensely with wealth.
Right, they meditate for hours, their chakras are perfectly balanced, they have fantastic vibes, but their bank accounts are totally empty.
And he argues it's because they fail to ground their energy. To manifest material wealth, you must be rooted in the material world. You can't just float around in the astral plane and expect your mortgage to disappear.
It requires translating spiritual frequency into physical action.
Exactly. If you are exclusively operating in the spiritual realm, you might find profound inner peace, sure. But you are effectively absent from the material plane where money is actually exchanged between human beings.
I look at it like a lightning rod. You can attract massive, raw, powerful electrical energy from a storm cloud. But if that copper rod isn't firmly bolted deep into the physical dirt, that energy is either going to dissipate harmlessly into the air, or it's going to strike the roof and burn your entire house down.
The lightning rod is the perfect visual. And how do we bolt ourselves into the dirt? By looking at Chapter 8, taking aligned action. Grounding means smart money management. It means budgeting, investing, and diversifying your income.
You don't just meditate on wealth, you set up the physical architecture to receive it.
Yes, and this connects beautifully to those viral social media discussions we pulled from Lemonade.
Oh, the forms of wealth list.
Yes, we analyzed thousands of posts talking about the forms of wealth and that viral list of 10 things money can't buy.
Let me actually read that list for you listening. It's
Yeah.
manners, morals, respect, character, common sense, trust, patience, class, integrity, and love.
Now, look really closely at the mechanics of that list. Every single item is a highly grounded, physical world method of interacting with society.
Right, because, how exactly do manners or integrity ground spiritual energy into actual capital?
Think about trust and respect. If you are operating a business or just navigating a career, trust is the ultimate currency.
Absolutely.
When you demonstrate unwavering integrity, like when you turn down a shady deal or you treat a service worker with profound respect, you are actively grounding your high spiritual frequency into physical behavior.
And people notice that.
They do. You build a reputation. That
But-
reputation builds a network, and that network organically brings physical opportunities and capital to your door. You cannot buy character. You forge it through physical world choices.
So grounding your energy means showing up in reality. It means paying attention to your budget, treating people with class, and honoring your commitments.
And crucially, taking absolute responsibility as the director of your life. In Chapter 9, Campbell tackles overcoming fear and building resilience. Being the director means you are no longer a victim of your circumstances. You are the author.
And stepping into authorship requires setting incredibly firm boundaries in the physical world.
Setting boundaries. That is huge. Because if you're practicing this radical self-love we've been talking about, your frequency is naturally going to rise.
Yeah, and suddenly you look around and realize you simply cannot tolerate the same toxic environments or draining relationships you used to put up with.
As your energy shifts, your external reality has to catch up. Grounding means having the courage to actively curate your environment.
So if a client is constantly disrespecting your time,
Or a friend is entirely invested in their own victimhood and just draining your energy, they act as a leak in your energetic system. Grounding requires the discipline to sever those leaks.
true wealth demands the discipline to protect your peace.
It does. And the final element of grounding is notoriously the most difficult part of the human experience.
Oh boy, what is it?
Trusting the process by completely surrendering the how and the when.
Oh man, the when is brutal. We are wired for instant gratification. We want things to happen on our exact specific timeline.
We tightly grip the steering wheel. But as Campbell shared in his interview, his personal timeline was almost always wrong.
Tell them the story about the book launch.
Right. So he wrote his book, he polished it, he put it out into the world on Amazon, and for an entire year, nothing happened.
Oh, crickets.
Crickets. Now, if he wasn't grounded, if he had let his ego take the wheel, he would have panicked. He would have felt rejected, maybe dumped thousands of dollars into a desperate marketing campaign, or just concluded the book was a failure and given up.
But he didn't.
He didn't. Because he was grounded, he surrendered the timeline to the universe. He kept doing the work. Eventually, he started posting random tarot reading videos on TikTok just for fun.
Doing his 10 minutes of joy.
Exactly. He mentioned the book on a whim in one of those videos, and the algorithm caught it, and sales absolutely exploded.
He caught the wind. The universe's timing was completely different from his own, and it was far more effective.
He stayed actively present in the moment. He did his joy, he managed his energy, he set his boundaries, but he released his stranglehold on the ultimate outcome. And that leads to Chapter 11, creating lasting impact.
So what does this all actually mean for you listening right now? Let's distill this, because we're talking about a monumental shift in how you operate daily.
A total paradigm shift.
Wealth is not just a number on a spreadsheet. It is the physical manifestation of your own self-love and integrity. If you are exhausted and struggling, you have to start blowing into the sails.
Stop chasing the cat.
Yes. Stop chasing the cat with that heavy, repellent energy of desperation and the divine wound. You need to honestly separate your heart's peaceful, inevitable desires from your ego's frantic, fear-based demands.
And start with just 10 minutes a day to reignite your nervous system.
Exactly. And above all, you must become the lightning rod. You have to ground your spiritual insights into the physical world through smart money management, unwavering integrity, fierce boundaries, and taking absolute responsibility for the reality you are authoring.
Use a profound evolution. You are moving from seeking external validation through hustle to cultivating this deep internal alignment that naturally attracts abundance.
Well, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over today as you go about your routine. We've established that money and external reality are just mirrors reflecting your internal state.
Right.
So, I challenge you to look directly at your biggest financial stressor right now. Look at the specific bill that keeps you up at night, or the lack of savings, or that specific client or job you absolutely dread.
Be brutally honest with yourself here.
Yes, ask yourself, is it truly a mathematical money problem, or is it actually a boundary you are terrified to set?
Oh, that's powerful.
Is it a difficult conversation you are avoiding out of fear? Or is it a part of your own inner child that you are refusing to value and protect?
Because that is where the real work begins. The moment you answer that question truthfully, the financial friction will begin to untangle itself.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, you do not need a rigid formula to calculate your worth. You already possess the exact internal architecture needed to design a life overflowing with joy and purpose.
You really do.
You just have to make sure you're catching the wind instead of exhausting yourself fighting against it. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you next time.